Hey YouTube, the house seems to be conspiring against me between from my basement cave here, flushing toilets and hot water heaters, tankless water heaters running and dehumidifiers and interruptions. I seem to be having a hard time. I said I wasn't going to try this over again, but I was interrupted. So here we go. Last time, and that's the last for sure. So tonight I'm going to do a quick review of the Sophos XG Firewall. The XG Firewall is very powerful. The GUI is very reasonable. We do lots with it. For home users, it's free, which is a very nice feature. The business costs are reasonable. I've been using it for a couple of years now. I've upgraded to the XG Firewall from the UTM. And by using these products, I talked about it to a friend of mine who does the IT work for a small corporation with a remote office, and I recommended it to him because it's quite straightforward when people are jack of all trades. So he takes care of the servers, the firewalls. He's a one-man IT shop. So he takes care pretty much of everything, applications, everything. So I recommended it to him, and he went out and purchased it based on my experience. I showed him my firewall, and he liked it a lot. So he went out and bought a Sophos firewall and a Red for his remote office with the wireless in it and all that fun stuff. So he has a VPN tunnel between that remote office and their corporate office, and he manages that all. So tonight, yeah. This is going to be an XG15 version demonstration. There's probably a few out there, but this is mine, so I thought I'd show it. Simple security is better security. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm behind, and I just watched the version 16, which seems to be a lot better. The menu seems to be even cleaner than it is right now. So having said that, before I get into all the GUI details on this, I'll bring up my ESX server and give you a quick walkthrough on that, because I'm not running the appliance, I'm running it as a VM on my ESX server. So here we go. This is my ESX server. This is the actual firewall itself running on this box. I have 2 CPUs, 3.4 gigahertz. I have hyperthreading turned on, so 4 vCPUs. I've got 4 drives, green drives, red drives, high-speed drives, and SSDs. A little bit of everything. 6 terabytes, 3 terabytes, low-speed stuff. The high-speed drive contains most of my VMs. The SSD I keep for the boot of the actual OS of the ESX. 32 gig of RAM, and there's maybe 1 or 2 VMs on here, but I've moved most of them to the Hitachi drive, which is very nice and very quick. So 32 gig of RAM. As you can see, it's not that busy. 7 interfaces. There's 4 NICs on the server. And just to let you know, I have a cold, so I sound like crap. We have 5 seasons in this country. We have the normal 4 that you have, and then we have cold season. Cold season overlaps both fall, winter, and spring. So I'm in cold season right now. So moving back, I have 4 NICs in my server. The outside interface is directly connected to the ESX. These interfaces here are all trunked to my Cisco switch. So that's nice because I can bring these all in as VLANs from the switch, and I can segregate my network nicely and my wireless nicely. Since the wireless access point supports VLANs, I can segregate my network for guests and work. And the inside people, the family, etc. My guests don't have direct access to my network thanks to the Sophos firewall. There's a DMZ specifically for guests. Inside users, Again, work, I have a separate one for work, as you can see here. I like to segregate my work traffic from my home traffic. Those two should never mix, and there's no reason to if you have a good firewall. Outside, as I said. So on my firewall, and you can see here also the CPU utilization is not that bad. It's quite low. The actual firewall itself is consuming a lot of it. I suspect my son, probably my daughter as well, is streaming some YouTube videos and playing Minecraft and God only knows what. On the firewall, I don't have all of the interfaces. I do have the outside interface, obviously, because I need to pass traffic. I have the inside because, again, I need to pass traffic. And this is what I was saying about guest networks and my work network and my DMZ. So I've moved, I have a couple of VMs here that'll be shutting down shortly. These were actually sitting in the DMZ on the outside interface between the firewall, the Sophos firewall, and the cable modem firewall. So the NATing between the VM and the port forwarding was quite simple. I went on the cable modem, did the port forwarding, no problemo. When I moved to a strict application server sitting in the DMZ, which is what I'm doing now, so these are about to be turned off. I've moved my application servers to this new server, and I took the opportunity to upgrade it to the latest version. I'm a Linux guy, and I happen to like Ubuntu, so I went from 14.04 on these to 16.04 on these, patched and everything, and now they sit behind my firewall, behind the Sophos firewall here. And the reason I mentioned this, well, these are obviously pretty straightforward. When there's not a lot of, when they're sitting on the inside, the outside, there's not a lot of natting to be done on this Sophos firewall because it's not even going to go through it. When I moved to the application server in the DMZ, obviously I had to do a destination hide NAT because the cable modem knows nothing about my inside network. So if I advertised my inside address, the modem would just drop it. Not knowing it, it only knows about its subnet because that's how stupid it is. I also chose not to plug my firewall directly onto the internet because that would have put my ESX server directly on the internet, and that would be a no. So I do have the hardware firewall, and the reason I mention all this is because the most difficult thing I found with the Sophos firewall was doing the destination NAT. I scratched my head for that quite a bit. I had to look at several YouTube videos, and I had to do a lot of reading online on it. Good thing about the Sophos firewall is even though it's free, there is still a lot of documentation available. So if you work in the industry, it's pretty straightforward. This one differs. The GUI is different, and the natting display, Cisco, Checkpoint, and FortiGate, I believe. I'm just starting to use FortiGate now myself. The FortiGate, so I'm not 100% familiar with it yet, but I know that the GUIs are all pretty much identical. The Cisco and the Checkpoint one are quite a lot the same in terms of natting. As I said, the GUI is pretty straightforward, but the natting was the most difficult, so that's why I'll mention that. So I will now go to my admin page here. I will log on to my Sophos firewall here, and of course my password is password, as you can see. I know password was difficult to type. It's one of those things tonight. All right, so here's your main screen. The control center, pretty straightforward. A lot of nice pretty graphs, some health. I'll quickly dive into this. It says that performance is a problem. Well, I can tell you the performance is not a problem. As you can see, I've given it a vCPU. The CPU is busy, but it's not maxed. It's never maxed. So I'm not sure what its issue is. If you have any clue, um, drop me a line, comment in the video. I do peak above the line every so often on the load performance. But if you look at everything else, everything is green. If you look at the CPU and memory, right now live, I mean, most of the time it's bored. I get a little bit of spiking. Memory below 60%. And if you look again at the ESX, 500 to 700 meg is what's used active. It pre-allocates all 4 gig, but I mean active memory, there's not a lot there, and it's using a gigahertz. So not very busy. And if you look at the year-to-date statistics from this firewall, which is nice, there's a lot of information available. Max 6.41, average 1.17. I mean, this thing is bored to death. Memory utilization. I mean, there's some peaks. Okay, so it's got up to 96%. Average is 38%. Well, 38% is nothing, absolutely nothing. Considering what this beast is doing, I mean, this thing is packed. The amount of blades that they've included on this is just phenomenal. VPN, firewall, URL filtering, proxying. I mean, Jesus, they've got everything under the sun here. So let's go back to the splash screen here. As I said, it's nice. You get some nice pictures here. You get some good idea, just that quick glance of how you're doing. 32 days of uptime. I mean, that's nice to know. Web activity, etc., etc. So there you go. Pretty straightforward. In terms of logs, there's all kinds of stuff in here. The dashboards, applications, networks and threats, VPN. Again, I'm not using the VPN. I'm not using email. I have no compliance whatsoever to do. So no, I'm not processing any credit cards. So no PCI, no SEPA, none of this, no HIPAA stuff. It's all good. Custom and specialized reports. I mean, I'm not even using mail or anything, so no biggie. Settings, data analyzer, and the log viewer. I'm not going to click on the logs because I don't want to show you some stuff on there. But the logs are quite large. I've allocated 100 gig to this VM, and right now I'm using almost 65 gigs. So there's a lot of logs there. In terms of the display, what they've changed in 16, which is nice, is these things are all spelled out now. These things I always have to click on is like, okay, what the hell am I looking for? Yeah, I'm looking for objects because I want to add some new objects. Where the hell's the objects? Oh yeah, the box down here. Yeah, I need to do some configuration type stuff. So is that here? Oh yeah, system. Yeah, okay. Protection. What the hell's protection? Oh well, here you go. Applications and other crap. Well, I don't use this stuff a lot because most of the stuff is turned off. So here's what I use the most. Here's network. Obviously, you're going to use network because you're going to want to know all of your interfaces. Here's where you define all your interfaces. You've seen my interfaces, so here's all my interfaces and the addresses and all the rest of that fun stuff. If we go back into it, you've got zones in here, wireless networks. I'm not using their access point. However, the company that makes the access points that I use, which is Ingenious, they seem to rebrand the Ingenious models, and I haven't had a chance to test Ingenious devices with it. I'm sure there is probably some ROM changes on the access points that they use to mix in better or mesh better with this software. So mesh networks, wireless LANs. So again, I'm not using it. No IP tunnels because I'm not doing VPNs. WLAN link manager. DNS is good. I'm using DNS, obviously. I attain my DNS from DHCP for my outside interface, obviously. I'm getting that from my cable modem. Um, I also choose IP4. You might see throughout this video some reference to IP6 addresses. I do not use IP6. I've turned it off on my cable modem and disabled it. I've disabled it everywhere, and every so often it pops its ugly head up, but que sera, sera. So, I mean, I have all my devices configured in here that I like to get to by name. So my game server, I have a multimedia server with movies on it running Plex. My Minecraft server, I have a router running because I'm a ham radio operator, so I have a DMZ with my ham radio equipment in it, and I have a router that passes traffic between the ham radio network and such. My NAS. I mean, this is all pretty straightforward stuff. So that's the DNS side of things. DHCP, very similar. You define your zones and then you go into it and you can look at the detail for it. So here's all the MAC addresses for all of my wonderful tools. So please feel free to hack me now that you've seen all my goodies. Yahoo. IP6 is turned off, as I said. There's no neighbors, and I'm not going to click on this because that would just be plain stupid, wouldn't it? Routing, I do have a little bit of routing. I have some routing to the 10 network because that is the address space that my ham radio equipment is using. So I do have some static routing in there to my ham radio network. As you can see, I'm telling it to go out the DMZ network to the router that I've set up, and there is a firewall on that router as well, and I'm doing a NAT outbound on that interface. So all of my ham radio stuff is hidden and I can access it from the inside. What else is good here? VPN, no. Administration, well, that's where your settings are and all the other fun stuff. I'm not going to walk through all that boring stuff because, you know, I'll let you try that for yourself. The firmware here is an important one. As I said, I've upgraded to the latest release. I did that a couple of weeks ago, so I'm on 15.01.3. Let's just check for shits and giggles if there's new version out right now. So there we go. I'm running the latest version. 16 hasn't come down as an option, so I'm not sure if there's an upgrade path for that. Given my norms, I don't like to do an upgrade in spot of anything, so I did the Windows 8 to Windows 10 upgrade. It's kind of cool to do because then you can see what breaks and what to do. But obviously that's not the kind of thing I like to do. I like to see, and then I erase the thing, and then I start over again. So this machine that I'm running on right now happens to be Windows 10. I did do an upgrade in place and watched what was needed, saw what was a problem, made sure I had all the drivers, and then I blew it away and did a clean install. So what I'll do is I'll probably just spin up a new VM, give it the resources necessary, after having downloaded version 16, if they're releasing it to the home users. I haven't checked that part out yet. And I will spin it up. I will migrate, and I will then drop off. If you look over here, I have my last version of the UTM still. That's this one here. I haven't deleted it yet because it's nice to have a backup in case something goes wrong. There you go, the ESXi version 9. I like the XG much better. The UTM was a great start. That was 3 years ago. I'm glad that I experimented with it, but the XG is far superior. I'm looking very much forward to trying out 16 based on the features that they say. The menus look much better. So back to this walkthrough. So there's your administration, and there's your firmware upgrades. That's the key one. That's probably the most difficult to find. I have some VMs running on here that do time, so I get time from a time source. I pull it from a government organization, NRC, time server, and then I only allow this device to do time. I don't allow my guests to do time on my internal network. So I've blocked NTP from the inside network as one of my rules. So all my servers and all my workstations and all my phones and everything are all time synced through this firewall and the NTP server running on here. Authentication. I'm doing a little bit of very, very little. I'm starting to play with it. As I said, it depends on how much of my son's life I want to make miserable. Guest portals, guest users. I don't allow my guest Wi-Fi to be wide open. That's just plain stupid. When a guest comes, I want to know that they're using my network, and I give them the rules of my network. It's pretty straightforward. I block pretty much everything outbound. I block everything inbound. I allow them a limited list of things that they can go out to, obviously web being one of them, mail, and a few other things. But they don't have free reign here. Some people curse. Well, then you can use your own network when you get home and do all that other fun stuff. In the meantime, when you're here, my guest network is limited. Obviously, the ACLs or the firewall rules do not let the guest network talk to any of my other networks other than the WAN interface. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. So I might set up this captive portal just to see how it works. System services, so I do use the proxy. I'm not going to walk through that. It's kind of cool. I also do the malware protection, all the rest of that. I mean, that can be a video onto itself. I mean, we're already pushing 22 minutes, so I'm not going to go into that. Current activity, that's kind of nice. I mean, you can look at live users, live traffic, all of that cool stuff. Diagnostics, your basic, looking at your log viewer, pinging, packet capture. So there's your tools that are doing your ping and all the rest of that. System graphs. So more detailed graphs compared to the splash page. Connection list, etc., etc. So last but not least, before I go on to the firewall rules, your assets. This is kind of cool stuff. Content, identity, so users and groups, objects within the firewall rules and the ACLs, which are over here. You define them all here. Your policies for your web filtering and traffic shaping and all that. I'm not traffic shaping yet. I might start doing that next. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. Doing YouTube videos like this cuts into the day also. Having said that, time to move on again. Hosts and services. So this is where you can define your IP hosts and groups. So obviously, certain groups, and yes, I do have OpenDNS that I was using for a while, but it caused conflicts. Okay, where's it blocked in DNS? Is it blocked on OpenDNS? Oh, or is it blocked on the Sophos Firewall? Okay, which one is it? It just become a pain in the ass. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take the OpenDNS off, and I'm just using the Sophos, and it seems to be quite powerful, and it blocks pretty much everything. Pretty straightforward. I also have a block list, so addresses that I choose to block. If there's something I see that I don't like, I have a block list. It's the first rule in my ACLs. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. That's basic security 101. It should be the rule at the top. I mean, why in heaven's name would you want the incoming packet to trace through all of your ACLs? That's the first thing it should hit and block right off the bat. Yeah, it may create overhead because you're firing that rule all the time, but it's good security. It's security 101. So that's that. So there you go. And host groups, these are all the groups. So I don't have a lot of groups. I have one group for my ham radio stuff. That way I can list all of the assets and all of the devices that I want to talk to the ham radio network. So I can list them all in here. Pretty straightforward. I don't use any of the rest of the stuff because services and services groups, sorry, I lie, I do use these. I've defined, there's the standard list of ports and names conventions that come with that, and I've also created some custom stuff here because it's just too much work to create everything with detail. So it's nice, it's clean when you're reading the rules that you can see all this stuff. So and service groups to bundle all that. So instead of having to list the various games, you can do an ACL that says for gaming, this is that. So if you click on gaming, well, there you go. You can see all the stuff, World of Tanks, Minecraft, the famous Clash of Clans, and all of their other applications. Supercell seems to do things differently. Clash Royale and their other games. So I had to allow those ports because, again, by default, poor administration, which is the way cable modems and everything else work, allow anything outbound. Block everything inbound, but allow anything outbound. I don't do that. I block everything outbound, and unless it's a specific port that's needed, it gets defined in a service port right here. And if there's many services, i.e., like I said, for gaming, then I will define a group and I will put them in. The PS4 has a whole shitload of ports that you need to do. I have guests that use iPad. I have tutors for the kids. So the tutor needs certain things. So obviously I've added a custom group for that. So the tutor can then connect and do those things and do demonstrations on their iPad. So there we go. Last but not least is the firewall rules. I'm not sure what I'm going to give away here, but hey, what the hell. Having said what I said earlier, this was the latest rule I added. I had been doing a lot of troubleshooting to get it running. I'm going to take this opportunity right now. I'm going to move this rule after the blocked addresses because obviously I want to have the addresses that I don't want accessing my Minecraft server blocked. So it's pretty straightforward. You can just drag it down. My bad. I need to edit it. And then you can move it in here. As I said, brain fog, where is it? It's right here, move. So I need to now drag it, which didn't work before. I need to put it right here. I want to say OK. That's not exactly where I wanted it. And that's the fun part about this. Let's try that again. There. See? Everything has its little quirks. There we go. There we go. Third time's a charm. I don't know. Watching the video. Is it 3, 4 times? Third time's a charm. So, as I said, important, block inbound right away. Anything that's undesirable. There's lots of block lists out there. The firewall itself does it. But as you're going through your firewall logs, you may come across some IP addresses that you want to block that may not be blocked by Sophos specifically because it's small potatoes. Also, you may be in touch with organizations like certain cert centers. They have their own block lists. I happen to work for an organization that has their own block lists, so sometimes I review that, sometimes I add that stuff to mine. But what ails them doesn't necessarily ail me, so it's good to have a block list. I do the same thing outbound in case a host gets compromised by some kind of web drive-by. You obviously don't want these devices to be able to go out on port 80, or any of the other ports which you do allow normally. So here on my LAN network, you're allowed to go pretty much anywhere except for my work. I've blocked from my LAN to work. Obviously, I don't want my work traffic to be accessible. So I allow from my LAN to any of my other DMZs. Obviously, I want to get to my DMZ. Obviously, I want to get to the outside. Obviously, I want to get to my guest network because who knows, maybe I want to do a scan or something like that on my guest network. So I allow anything to my from LAN to anywhere. But again, only certain protocols. So if you edit that, as you can see, I don't allow everything. There is gaming, so I do pretty straightforward. There's a series of ports here: HTTP, HTTPS, ICMP, IKE, SSH, RDP, WebMIM for the GUI for your Linux boxes that you manage, I manage, SMB to my DMZs. Because I have some file and print stuff running in the DMZs, and it's easier to drag and drop files that way. Kick, some Google ports, gaming, the PS4. So again, good use of the groups. Instead of having to list every single port, I know if there's a problem with gaming, I can drop something in gaming. Pretty straightforward. I allow this stuff to run all the time. Again, this is the LAN to the network. I'm going to hit cancel on that. All right, so block addresses. This one was the most difficult, as I said earlier. This one took me forever to figure out. Basically, what I'm saying is forward requests for Minecraft to my application server from anything that's hitting this address. So when I port forward from my cable modem on port 25565 to 25569, I port forward from the cable modem to the .10 address, which is the outside interface for the firewall, and then I forward it with a NAT, a high NAT, to my application server, and I apply the IPS services on it. Pretty straightforward, pretty safe. As I said, forward, there is a translation in here. That's what's important. This is TCP protocols only. There is a translation in here because the outside network between the cable modem and the firewall doesn't understand any of my inside network addresses, and I'm not about to advertise that because most providers, well, they suck. Their security protocols are not all the best, so that's pretty much straightforward. So as I said, this was the most difficult one. That is my most recent rule. So I block from my LAN to my work, and then I allow from my LAN to all of my networks. This is kind of redundant because you have this rule here that says LAN to any, but sometimes it's necessary to do other things. So when I'm testing or I have other stuff I want to do that doesn't fall into this rule, I can turn this one on and I can do that. So I mean, this is off most of the time, but I was doing some troubleshooting earlier. Therefore, I have that on. Work to WAN, I'm allowing pretty much any service outbound from my work network. The rationale here is that my machines that are sitting on this DMZ have firewalls on them themselves. They're only usable when the VPN is turned on. So with the VPN turned on, basically the machine becomes invisible, and the only ports that are available through the VPN are obviously the VPN. There is no split tunnel on those VPNs. Excuse me. Remember, I'm in 5th season here. So for troubleshooting purposes and all the rest of that, it was just easier to go this route. From DMZ to WAN, I don't allow a whole lot out. I have the need to update my application server, so I allow some HTTP out and a few other things. I have some guests in there that I run, so obviously I want to do some mail testing. I do allow Minecraft outbound, and I will remove the Apple iOS because there's no point in having that in there anymore. But that was again for testing. The guest Wi-Fi, I guess what's important here is this is my guest network. I said, obviously I lied, I was not allowing everything, but I recently had to change it because it became a pain to troubleshoot every time I had a guest. I will put that back the way it was. That just makes sense. And I will create a group for that, and I will just start dropping stuff in the group. So instead of saying any service, obviously, I will say guest, and I will drop the common stuff in there. I'll put the Apple stuff back in, and web and all the rest of that. I have this rule here as well, because again, from my LAN network, I allow from the LAN to any, but again, remember, only certain protocols. So if I have an application that's not behaving properly, it's behaving badly, and it's trying to do some obscure port, and I want to figure it out easily, well, I can just turn this rule on. I can allow it outbound temporarily. I can grab, do a packet capture, and look at the ports on there. The last rule here, this is key. Again, this is Security 101. You're an idiot if you don't have this on your firewalls. I mean, a novice, I understand a novice, but I mean, if you're a seasoned professional and you don't have a deny any rule, I mean, what in heaven's name have you been doing in security all this time? Yes, I know the implicit rule on all firewalls does a deny any. There's one small problem with that. There's no logging involved. So I put a specific rule at the end here to do a block of everything. And this way I can log it and I can look at it, and that's a nice thing. Yeah, the Sophos firewall, all in all, pretty straightforward. I mean, obviously, if you were in the work using this for business, you probably have a lot more rules, but for all purposes, I don't see the need for a whole lot more than I've got here. I mean, 2 of these here, and yes, I probably could have consolidated into one, but it's nice to see that like this separately, because then right off the bat, you can easily tell, is it stuff coming in or is it stuff going out? And yes, you have in and out bytes, but this here is pretty straightforward. I know it's coming in just by looking at the rule, and I don't see any traffic coming in. And again, from the going outbound, I don't see any traffic going out. So I know my block list, I'm not being impacted by the devices on my block list, which is good. Not a whole lot of Minecraft traffic here because, as I said, this is my newest rule, and as you saw, I moved it, so now it's protected. My LAN, pretty straightforward there again. 928 gig in, so into the firewall from the WAN, 11.96 gig, so 12 gig out. So this should double after I'm done this video, because this video is easily going to be over probably 2 or 3 gig. I'm just doing a refresh on my page right now, and it says 0 bytes because it's still recording. But according to my video capture, I've been running 39 minutes, so I think it's time to end this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rules, including deny any. So really 10 rules. And if you exclude the 2 blocks, the 2 automatic drops, I've got basically 8 rules, 7 which are really important rules, which one is turned off. So we're down to 6 rules, so you should be able to do this in not a whole lot. And if you don't have an application server and you don't have any need for anything coming in from the outside, then this rule will automatically be ditched as well. So, I mean, pretty straightforward. There's not a lot here. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe to my channel. That would help me because I want to rename my channel because the 16-digit hex naming convention that they use is ridiculous. And even though I've been with Google forever, since I've had the invite from a friend many years ago, they've made it so that you have to have so many subscribers. And I have a fair amount of views on my videos, but not a lot of subscribers. So subscribe, and that would help me to rename the channel. Beyond that, that's it. Thanks for watching. Comments below. Subscribe. Have questions, drop me a line. Simple security is better security. I have to agree. Keep it simple. KISS rules, never wrong. All right. Have a good one. Good night, YouTube.